اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان، ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله وقوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وأنا عسى تكرهوا شيئا وهو خير لكم وأنا عسى تحبوا شيئا وهو شر لكم. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. When we examine the discussion on mental health in Islam, a topic that alhamdulillah is gaining traction within our speakers, and ulama now, young and old, are beginning to realize the era we live in and the production of stress and anxiety within everyone's hearts, not just our young ones, then this topic within the realm of the Deen of Islam also has to be discussed. As we know, Islam in its totality is a system of life. There is no aspect, no dimension of society that the Deen doesn't comment on. It's not an act, it's not a religion of rituals. It's not a system of belief of annual traditions. It's a complete and encompassing system that talks about society, economics, politics, everyday life, our individual path towards Allah, our family life, etc., etc. And in this day and age, what needs to be discussed, and inshallah tonight I'll touch on that in tonight's Barsi Majlis, is the idea of stress and anxiety in Islam. Managing it, identifying it. What is the lens in which Islam looks at this idea of stress and anxiety? I'll tell you what the problem is first, like I like to do, and then attempt to kind of solve that, albeit in one discussion. It's not possible, but at least let's get the ball rolling. And this is just based on feedback on my travel pre-pandemic, talking to youth, talking to elders. The problem was, and I think there's still a little bit of a hint of this, is that if one is riddled with stress and anxiety, then that is an indication of their low faith and their weak faith. And so naturally, if that discussion is quite common within our communities, within our families, then what ends up happening is, it's a very dangerous now second step, is that those who are going through stress and anxiety, they hide it. They don't express it. They quietly kind of deal with it in their own way, or they ignore it, because the fear is that if I say something, I'll be labeled as somebody whose iman is weak, who needs to strengthen his salat, you need to read more Quran. All these things are there. And for the longest time now, mental health was looked at as nothing but people like me on this member talking about mental health. That was me coddling today's young generation. labeled as oversensitive, highly dramatic generation, and people like me that talk about their stress and their anxiety in this difficult era, all I was doing was I was empowering them, right? I was giving them a little bit more leeway to kind of, shut down in their stress and anxiety. Because now what happens is that everyone compares, their era to this era right now, right? Hamana zamana as you start that dot sentence. When I was your age, beta, dot, right? And right away we assume that how I was raised when I was 17, 18 in my village or my city or in LA or wherever I'm from, it has to be the exact same way that today's 18-year-old should be raised. And therein lies the problem. Is that we don't understand the era we live in today. If we reject this notion of mental health, and mind you, I come from a typical, as you know, a lot of you in LA know me very well. I come from a typical immigrant Pakistani family. My father, my mother migrated to Toronto, where I am right now, coming to you live in the early 70s from Karachi. A one-on-one talk between him and his father, my dada. There was never sort of like a check-in, are you okay, this and that. No, in fact, he would sit there and say, if I ever came across, and I asked my elders who are right now sitting, watching me, if you ever went to your father growing up in your respective city, wherever you're from, India, Pakistan, wherever you're from, and you went to your father and said, Baba, I'm feeling stress and anxiety, and you were 17, 18 years old, he would say, Acha, oh, really? Do you want me to give you a reason to feel stress and anxiety? And you simply didn't have an outlet for it. Please understand my initial point. You didn't have an outlet for it. It doesn't mean that because you didn't have an outlet for your stress, that the stress wasn't there. The anxiety wasn't there. Okay? The reality is, and my parents should understand this, and I think a lot of them do. Alhamdulillah, in this age of awareness, I'm seeing a lot of parents step up and really take charge and take control and be involved in the development of their child from a young age all the way through their teens and then their early 20s, and that's great to see. That we live in a completely different era. We live in an era of glamorization. We live in an era of consumerism. We live in an era of branding. People get paid today just to be them, okay? They're popular because they're popular, right? And so before it used to be that if you had a talent, a skill, if you went to school, if you were, if you were a professional, you would get paid. Now, none of that matters. If your post goes viral, right? If your makeup line hits the market, for example, right? If, you get enough viewers, for example, then you are a millionaire, okay? And then wherever, one Instagram post and you get paid in the millions, right? One arrival in a party scene or one arrival in some gathering, and all of a sudden the host now has to cut you a check just for what? Just for showing up, okay? And we live in that era, and today's 16, 17-year-old impressionable youth now has given all of their validation, all of their acceptance, all their self-worth, all their self-image to who? To external, to everybody outside. You tell me what I'm worth. You tell me what kind of person I am. You tell me whether or not I'm ugly or beautiful. You tell me if I'm accepted or not accepted, right? So you'll post this picture, you'll post that shopping spree, you'll post that vacation, you'll post, this moment with your husband and your wife, for example, right? With the hopes that what? People say, wow, what a great couple. Oh my God, amazing shoes. Oh my God, is that, for example, is that Florida or is that Hawaii or wherever? Yes, it is. We went for our 5th year anniversary. Aww, all this is there. Right? All of that with the hopes that people now accept my lifestyle, my choices, my boots, my vacation trips, my husband's looks, for example. Okay? It's just the era we live in. Now, my topic is not social media. It isn't. My topic is what produces from this era of consumerism and branding is stress and anxiety. A lot of self-image issues. A lot of our youth today simply don't feel like they belong. A lot of them are depressed. A lot of them are on antidepressant pills. A lot of them have suicidal thoughts. A lot of them now go towards drugs and alcohol and gambling, for example. A lot of them drown themselves in music. All our own Shia kids. Okay, forget the days where we look to, this group and that group and this minority and that religion. Forget all of that. All of that bala now has hit our homes and has hit our circles. Okay, and those days are gone. कि नहीं हमारा बच्चा नहीं हमारा बच्चा फरिश्ता है. No. आपका बच्चा खराब है भाई. Your kid is wrong. Your kid is wrong. No. My kid though, Asman said no. Those days are gone. I'm not saying every kid is bad. I'm saying that we need to now break that. We can't be naive. Okay? Now, that's the muqaddama introduction. The first point I'm going to make, there's a lot of people listening to me that I know are riddled with anxiety and stress. They can't explain it. They start crying for no reason. They have this pit in their stomach that's been there for years and years. Because of that, their eating is gone. They're insomniacs. They're up all night online, reading this, reading that, on this site, on this group. In the meantime, they're just drowning in their own anxiety. They can't leave the house. They can't meet people, right? On top of that, it's a quarantine. It's a pandemic. People are scared. People are nervous. What's going to happen? All these things now are crippling our families and our communities. So the first thing that I'm going to say to all of you, especially my young guys, you having stress and anxiety is not a sign of your weak faith. It's not. Islam and up and down the Quran, many verses, and I'll present to you a couple of them, describe some of the greatest people Allah created during moments of distress. I'll give you one example. Okay, this example blew me away. Surah Maryam, the only chapter in the Quran named after a woman, the mother of Nabi Isa, one of the 4 great women. Okay? The Quran describes a moment where she's about to deliver. She's going through her labor pains, and the birth of Nabi Isa now is imminent. She finds comfort at the base of a tree, as many of you know the story. And then she says something. She says a very, very important statement that Allah includes in the Quran that I found to be incredible. She says to herself, Nabi Maryam, and I don't have the actual address. Those who wish to get it from me, I'll get it to you. She says, Ya laytani mittu qabla hadha. Ya laytani. Like, woe unto me, like, oh God, like you feel sorry for yourself. What have I gotten myself into? Mittu qabla hada. If only I died before this. Follow me very carefully. She's about to deliver a prophet of God, okay? A woman of faith, naturally. She's seen the miracles of the heavens, food brought down to her, all of that. The labor pains hits. And as men, we can never understand the pains of delivering a child. Ever understand. Okay? Ever understand. That's why to my young guys out there, if you are a young husband and either your wife is pregnant or I don't know, you guys are planning children, please take it from me and just be as sensitive of a man as possible during her. You should be sensitive anyways, extra sensitive during her pregnancy. Okay? Now, look at the statement. She says, if only I died before this birth, meaning the pain was so overbearing, she at that moment now wanted death over the pains of labor, okay? I want you to imagine that somebody you know is getting wheeled into the hospital, about to give birth now, okay? And she says, you know what, I just want to die, I just want to die, I just want to die. I've seen it happen where the person says that, the woman who's pregnant, who's going through her contractions, a lot of pain, is saying that, okay? And someone says, don't say that you're being ungrateful towards God, right? That those are all minute things, don't say those, it's not good for you, don't say those things, okay? And here is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala including this statement by Bibi Maryam as one of the verses in the Quran. My point in all of this is not about pregnancy, obviously. My point is that was a moment of extreme stress on one of the 4 greatest women in Islam. Okay? That's one example. There's no correlation between stress and anxiety and a weak level of faith. The greatest believers in God have faced the most stressful moments and have openly expressed their stress and anxiety. On the day of Ghadir, When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now is telling the Prophet, Ya ayyuhar Rasul, balligh ma unzila ilayka min rabbik, reveal what's been revealed to you, right? At the end of that very famous verse, he says, I will protect you from the people. Deliver what was delivered to you, meaning go ahead, announce Amir al-Mu'minin as a successor. If you are fearful towards the reaction of the people, I will protect you from the people. The fact that God has to say that means that he realized there was a little bit of fear and anxiety inside the heart of who? The Holy Prophet of Islam, the greatest creation of mankind. Okay? He was afraid that how would they react? He wasn't afraid for his own life, whatever, but he was afraid of how they would react because he knew those who rejected Ali and Ghadir, they would have a difficult path afterwards. The fact that Allah has to reassure his prophet that, look, I'm there right beside you, don't worry, but I'll protect you. You go and you do what you have to do. And there are countless examples like this. The first point I want to make is, please, if you're somebody who doesn't accept this idea of mental health in today's youth, who think that people like me are just coddling this overdrive generation, that's fine. You can believe that. I mean, it's not backed by science, but don't sit there and ridicule the child and say, if you prayed salat more, then you wouldn't be in this predicament. If you, for example, stopped, doing this haram, then, it wouldn't result in this. Now, mind you, there's a whole discussion on the avenue of spirituality, and of course, but as I've often said, it's dawa and it's dua. Dawa and dua, both of them together have to go hand in hand, right? We can't be seeing a counselor every single week for my anxiety, popping antidepressant pills, and not, of course, have a connection with Allah. At the same time, we can't simply spend our 24 hours on the musalla of the prayer mat, say Allah, 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 tasbih, 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 and hopefully it'll go away. No. Some cases require a professional analysis. Okay? So that's my first point I want to make to all of you. The second point that I want to make, or maybe the third point I want to make in dealing with stress and stress management in Islam, is that Islam says to find an outlet. Find an outlet. Okay? وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا, the Quran says. For the ones who have piety, Allah will create an outlet for them. A makhraj, an exit for them. Makhraj from khuruj. Khuruj in Arabic means exit, to leave. Now, let me tell you a story. All of you, inshallah, are with me. They say that, a university professor walked into his class one day with a glass of water. Okay? It was filled with water. He was about to, start his experiment, picks up the glass, and asks the entire class, can you tell me how much this glass weighs? Follow the example, it's a very good one. Can you tell me how much this glass weighs? Someone said 8 ounces, 12 ounces, 16 ounces, 10 ounces. He says that when will the weight of if the glass is the same and the water in the glass remains the same, how is it that the weight can fluctuate? Okay. So they said, well, the only way that it'll seem heavier to you without putting more water in, or perhaps a heavier glass, is if you carry it too long. Think about for a moment, okay? I have my phone here in my hand, okay? My phone is here. I'm carrying it right now. It's not so heavy, okay? If I remain in this position for an hour, it feels like it's a little bit heavier. If I do that for 10 hours, it gets heavier. For 24 hours, it gets heavier. Has the phone got heavier? No. The fact that my arm now is not able to handle even the weight of the phone is only because I've been holding on to the phone for way too long. So the longer I hold on to the glass of water, the heavier the glass feels, even though it's the exact same weight as it was when it first entered my hand. It's simply because I've been holding it on for too long that now it feels unbearably heavy to the point where my shoulder, my arm can go numb. But the weight of the water hasn't changed. It's exactly how we are with our stress and our anxiety. If we hold on to it initially, it may not seem like it is, one of those deal breakers. or those situations where I lose sleep, or I lose a friend, or I resort to numbing devices like social media, like drugs and alcohol, like gambling and womanizing, right? But the reason why it got to this point was because I held on to the stress too long. I didn't let go of it. If I picked up my phone and I put it down right away, there's no effect to my arm. It's a very light phone, okay? There are moments where the slightest little bit of comment by somebody, the slightest little bit of disagreement, a fight, let's say, for example, a rejection of a job, for example, a broken engagement, for example, okay? A miscarriage for a young couple, a COVID-19, God forbid, positive test. After 14 days, the symptoms are gone and now you're clear, right? All those things, and I'm not minimizing any of that, but I'm saying that the longer we hold on to these things, the heavier they become to handle. And when it becomes unbearable, we're riddled and drowning in depression then. Everything from pills to not seeing people to, the effects of everything becomes even more difficult, okay? And that's when Islam says, take that stress, it's all part of this dunya, of course, and find an outlet for it. If that outlet is worship, then so be it. If that outlet is poetry, so be it. If that outlet is talking to a friend, so be it. But don't hold on to it. Don't harbor it. Don't keep holding it for days and days and days. It's going to cripple you. It's going to destroy you, okay? For example, if somebody upsets you, and this is a classic example, a comment is made, you're upset about the comment, weeks pass by, and you're fuming mad every single day, and you finally get the himmat and the courage to call the person, you squash it, it becomes a massive misunderstanding, you feel better. Well, guess what? You could have felt better 2 weeks ago had you squashed it at that moment, okay? But 14 days of holding on to this one little comment now made your blood boil. It got heavier and heavier until what? Until you found your outlet, okay? Because the reality is, I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news, this dunya was created to stress us. وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. That's what it's meant to, Allah flat out says, I'm going to test you. Now, why that is, how that is, that's a different story altogether. That's not my topic. The philosophy of hardship is a different topic altogether. But we need to understand that, we're searching for, ek lamhe sukoon mujhe de de. So give me one moment of sukoon, give me one moment of, and that's fine. That's fine. Obviously, we wait for the breeze on a very hot day. For sure, that breeze feels amazing. But we have to learn to handle our stress. We can't keep praying for days where the stress days are over. And they're not going to be over. And in fact, every single day that we go through our stress, we get stronger and stronger and stronger. Let me give you a very simple hadith by Imam Ali, alayhi salatu wasalam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. A man approaches Imam Ali and begins to complain with Amir al-Mu'mineen. My health and my finances and my family and my worship, it's all suffering right now. I'm going through a lot of anxiety, a lot of problems, blah, blah, blah. And Imam Ali listens to him, gives him his ear. At the end, he says, I'll give you patience. I'll pray for your patience. Allah give you sabr, inshallah. The man leaves. A few days later, he comes back and he adds more to his list of stresses and problems. That not only are those previous ones, there's Maula, but these ones are also here as well. Now this, now that, now this, begins to complain. Instead of you asking Allah for stress-free, anxiety-free life, don't ask Allah for that. Ask Allah that through my stress and anxiety, my iman is intact. I don't lose my iman. And sometimes, and let me say this to you, sometimes it is those darkest moments where we understand the true reality of ourselves. Well, I'll give you an example, okay? For the past 25 years, our youth committee takes about 70, 75 youth up north for a 5-day camping trip, okay? 5 days and 4 nights, and we invite about 2 or 3 scholars, and we go. It's an amazing time of canoeing and volleyball, and and classes and debates and campfires and the whole nine. And I remember specifically last year, when we went. We didn't go this summer, of course, because of the pandemic. But last year we went on a beautiful island. It was a gorgeous campsite. There's one youth, one kid, very close to me. We land. We arrive in the island. Everyone is going to their cabins. We're unpacking. And he comes to me, Sabahat. I go, yes. He goes, look at this flashlight I got. I got like this sick flashlight. I said, oh yeah? He's like, yeah, I mean, it's so bright. Now at that moment, it was 12 noon. It was almost lunchtime. And if he had turned on the flashlight at that moment, I couldn't realize how bright it was. And this kid could not wait until Maghrib hit, until there was sunset, it was night, right? And then he could not wait to show me the brightness of this flashlight. So lo and behold, that first day now, we announced at dinner that Maghrib is in a half an hour. Okay, from the prayer hall to the campfire is about a 2-minute walk. There's absolutely no lights. Please make sure you bring your flashlights, otherwise you're gonna trip and fall, all over the place. Okay, no problem. So we ride there for Salat now. Everybody has their hoodies on. It gets cold there. They have their flashlights. They're ready to go. They can't wait. Salat is over. They begin to, we leave the prayer area. We walk through the woods towards the campfire, and this kid comes up. Asabai, check it out. Turns on the flashlight, and it was a legit flashlight, man. It lit up like half the friggin' island. I was like, whoa, now that's a serious flashlight. He goes, yeah. I couldn't believe it. My dad got it for me and this and that. But it took the darkness around him for me to understand how bright that light is. Had he turned that light on at 12 p.m. when the sun was hot and bright, I wouldn't understand the power of that flashlight. Sometimes it takes us to be riddled with anxiety and stress to understand how bright our flashlight is inside of us. It's a good litmus test. It's a good measuring stick. It's good to find out, sometimes, like I'm a sports guy, as you guys know. I'm a huge basketball fan, and, it was fun watching the Lakers, win again this year. And I remember the era of Michael Jordan in the 90s. Watched all 6 of his championships live. And back then, any guy that would come into the basketball league, if you wanted to find out exactly if you were good or not, if you could hang with the boys, you play against Jordan. In this era, you play against LeBron. Or in this era, let's say you play against KD or whatever the case may be, okay? There has to be a measuring stick to find out where you're at, right? A lot of you right now are riddled in darkness. I know, you're quietly suffering. Outside, you're smiling, sabtika, but inside, right, a lot's going on. Now you could choose now to use that to go towards your numbing devices, right? Drown yourself in social media, right? And cover these emotions, right? Go out, get high, for example, numb your intellect. Go out, get drunk, for example. Go out, gamble. Go out, music. All these things that are just going to sit there and add more destruction to you. Or you can take it as a moment to find out how bright is my light of deen inside of me. Do I turn towards God in this darkness, or do I turn away from God in this darkness? Do I sit there and do I collapse myself at the gates of Allah, or do I complain to God, why me, God? And that's the litmus test. And sometimes it takes the darkness, right? Nabi Yunus is inside where? The belly of the whale. The Quran captures this moment very beautifully. فَنَادَى فِي ظُلِمَاتٍ أَنْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنْتَ سُبْحَانَكَ إِنِّي كُنْتُ مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. He says, in that darkness, he called out in that darkness, Allah, there is no God but you. Glory be to you. I was the one that made the mistake. إِنِّي كُنْتُ مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. I was the one that made that mistake. It took the darkness of the belly of the whale for him to find out, wait a second, now I'm in here, and this is a moment of realization. As dark as it is, it enlightens the inner soul. That's the ajib part sometimes of anxiety and stress. You open your eyes, you see darkness around you. You open your soul, you see light around you. And the Quran says, we heard him, we freed him, وَكَذَلِكَ نُنْجِلْ مُؤْمِنِينَ. We'll do the exact same thing to the believers. right? So it's a matter of sometimes embracing our stress. Yes, I go through stress, you go through stress, anxiety as well. Knowing that it's not a sign of you being a weak mu'min. It's not a sign of you, of God hating you, God forbid. No, sometimes precisely the only avenue he has for your growth is for you to go through a little bit of temporary discomfort for permanent gain. The verse I read from Surah Baqarah, and then we'll go towards Masaib, is the fact that sometimes we equate emotion to reality. Right? So sometimes, we think, oh, because I'm not comfortable right now, or because I hate doing this, I despise it, it's not good for me. Or I love this, I love doing this, it must be good for me. And the Quran says, look, don't place that much emphasis on emotion, right? وَأَنَا عَسَى تَكْرُهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. It could be that you despise something, it's actually very good for you. Or it could be what? وَأَنَا عَسَى تُحِبُّ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ it could be that you love something, adore it. It's actually very detrimental for you, right? So not everything is how I feel, okay? I can be anxious, I can be stressful, I can be, scratching rock bottom, but I can at the same time now be what? I can at the same time be in touch with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One small example I've used up and down Muharram, I want to use it here with all of you, inshallah, and then into Masa Dua, a little bit of Masaib, and then I'm done. And that is that I want you to imagine that, and I've made this point before, and I'll make it a point here. It's a very, very beautiful point. It's not mine, of course. In the middle of the night at 3 o'clock in the morning, your phone rings. That's never a good call, right? It's never a good call. It's not, hey, what's going on? Were you sleeping? Yeah, I was sleeping. It's always something that is, God forbid, serious. So your phone rings at 3 a.m., you answer it. It's one of your friends, panting, stuttering, confused, scared. I'm here, I'm stuck here, can you come and get me? Like, sure, get out of bed, put your clothes on, drive there, pick him up, drop him off. You don't ask any questions. He needs to rest, whatever he was doing. And you come home, and that's it. You're bound to think the next day, you're bound to stop and think for a moment that I wonder why he called me. Of all the friends he had, I wonder why he called me. And then you actually have a conversation with him after a couple of days. Can I ask you a question? Why, you decided to call me? I know you have closer friends. And he says to you, you're the only one that I knew would pick up and would come and get me. I had the utmost certainty, listen to me very carefully, the utmost certainty that if I was to call anybody at 3 o'clock in the morning, at my worst, I was embarrassing that night when I called you, but I didn't care. I knew that you would pick me up, you wouldn't judge me, you'd drop me off, you wouldn't ask me a single question, and you didn't. In the process now, he sends you a very clear message that when all closed, I always have your door that I can always rely. Now, those of you who are riddled in anxiety and stress, depressed, you've hit rock bottom, okay? And maybe you've gone towards some horrible habits. Maybe you think yourself as a zero. Maybe you think, not only am I anxious, I have anxiety, I have depression, but now I'm a horrible Muslim. So I have that regret and that remorse. And you think for a moment, nobody wants me, God hates me, all that. You've hit rock bottom. At rock bottom, if you were to call God at rock bottom, 3 o'clock in the morning, your friend hit rock bottom. He called you. He called you with no hesitation, thinking, you know what? If anyone's going to answer my call, it's this guy. You call God at rock bottom when everyone else you think has shunned you. Your parents don't get you, your siblings don't get you, your community has turned their back on you, the ulama never talk about real issues, blah, 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 all these excuses, absolutely. At rock bottom, at 3 o'clock in the morning, you call out to Allah. Number one, he'll answer. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةِ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. When my servants ask you about me, Ya Rasulullah, tell them that I am near. I will always answer the call of the caller whenever they call. More importantly than him answering the call, you're sending him a very clear message that God, when I think I have nobody, I remind myself that I have you. Sometimes that happens when you've hit rock bottom. Sometimes that happens when your anxiety has really crippled you. Sometimes that happens when there's darkness around you from all corners and you think, oh my God, I'm sitting here in the darkness. You reach in your back pocket and you find that flashlight. that's always been there. This time you decide to what? Turn it on. My brothers and my sisters, stress management is a real issue in Islam. Anxiety, mental health, these things are absolute real issues. This is not some coddled, oversensitive, highly dramatic generation. No, we live in a very difficult era, difficult time.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad.